On today's video, we have on a special guest to talk about the return of Kadarius Toney. He's back on the practice field, but will we see him available for Sunday's matchup against the Denver Broncos?
We're also going to pick his brain on the state of the Chiefs after the Bengals loss. Stick around.
Welcome back to another edition of All Chiefed Up. We have a special guest with us here today. You guys probably know him as the founder and the host of the podcast The Spoken, and at Lance The Spoken on Twitter. We have Lance Twidwell with us today. How you doing, man?
Better now, man. I'm glad we got to finally do this. I know I've seen a lot of your guys' work, and I'm glad that we finally got to join up and talk a little Chiefs football, man. So thanks for having me, guys, first and foremost.
I just listened to one of your podcasts today, actually. It was the newest one. You guys only do podcasts on Saturdays, right?
That is correct. We have tight schedules, man. So we have to make sure we get one consistent day. And I mean, we've missed, I think, 1 week in the last 3 years. So it really has worked for us to do it on the weekends, right before Sundays.
So news out today is that Kadarius Toney and Joe Thuney are back at practice. What do you know about that? Do you think they're looking to get in the game this weekend? You think Tony's going to stay out longer? He's just getting back in the mix, or what? What do you know about that?
Yeah, so what I've heard is that Kadarius Toney's been really chomping at the bit to get back on the field. I know that this is something that's been very frustrating for both him and the Chiefs because of the fact that he was a guy that the Chiefs wanted to bring in to be an immediate impact player, which is something I did not foresee initially just because of his history with the Giants, the brief history, albeit, but he's been a guy that's dealt with injuries in the past, primarily the same injury he just suffered with the Chiefs when it comes to his hamstrings. So this is really taking him back a little bit from what the Chiefs were wanting him to be, which is what we saw briefly in those 2 games that he played before having the injury. So I am expecting that if he is capable of going, that he will play to some magnitude in this game. I don't know how much that'll be, but I do know they want to work him into the next 3 to 4 or 5 games before the playoffs, because I am anticipating they're going to utilize this guy as a legitimate weapon in the postseason run that they're hoping to have. So if he is healthy enough to play, I do anticipate we'll see Kadarius Toney on the field.
Okay, yeah. So Kadarius Toney, man, he's kind of been a hot topic here. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Did we get ripped off? Did we get fleeced? What's it going to be? When we picked up Kadarius Toney, we here at All Chiefed Up thought we probably were going to go after some defense, maybe a little pass rusher. Brett Veach throws out the wide receiver, and he got somebody that we didn't think we needed. But once we seen him on the field, we thought, hey, man, this guy does have a little Tyreek-esque in him. What do you think about that whole entire transaction in general? I know it's a little old news right now, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you guys. I don't want to sit here and pretend like I was like all on the Kadarius Toney train from the beginning, because I actually wasn't. I was somebody that wanted to see him prove his worth before I started to jump on the bandwagon. Because although he was insanely talented, we saw some of his action in Florida. He's just an insanely talented athlete. We've seen guys like him throughout the history of the NFL where they have this talent, they have this promise, they look like they could be something special, and it just never really comes together, whether it is health concerns, they're doing carelessness off the field, whatever the case is, man. We've seen this before. So when I heard that the Chiefs traded for him, I knew that Brett Veach was big on him, so it was bound to probably happen, especially given the fact it didn't work in New York. But see, my thing is, I'm actually somebody that's a big fan of Brian Daboll. I know he has a connection here in Kansas City, so I'm maybe a little biased about it, but I believe in Brian Daboll. I think he saved Josh Allen's career up there in Buffalo, and I think he's going to do some really good things up in New York. Whether it's with Daniel Jones or another quarterback, doesn't matter. I believe in that guy. And when I heard that he was willing to move off Kadarius Toney for the little amount that the Chiefs gave up to get him, I was a little worried about that, given also his injury concerns, missing literally half of his career to this point of his career, and then having injury concerns now. But once I saw him on the field and I saw that the Chiefs started to utilize him immediately, and I saw the way him and Patrick just connected immediately, like it looked like they've been practicing literally all offseason together as if he was Juju Smith-Schuster, I realized there's something special about this guy. And if it connects and if it goes right, this is going to be somebody that's going to be in Kansas City for the next 5, 6, 7 years, because he's that young and he's just that talented. So it's really just going to come down to, what is his body going to let him do? If he stays healthy, I anticipate Kadarius Toney is going to be a guy that's going to make some big plays here in Kansas City. Because like you mentioned, the Tyreek Hill comparison is always going to be there because the Chiefs traded away Tyreek Hill. That's always going to be a comparison when you have a speedster that can make game-breaking plays. I don't think he's ever going to be anything close to Tyreek Hill, because no one's ever going to be. He's one of one. But if he can make plays that are similar to that, they can give the Chiefs offense a little bit of a break, and he can go bust out a 45, 50-yard touchdown here and there, then, I mean, I don't think any of us are ever going to complain about it. And I think it makes the Tyreek Hill trade a little less painful, because I'm still hurting from that one, even though we're doing just fine without him.
So we've been wanting to move on from this Bengals game for obvious reasons. But since you're here, do you think if Kadarius Toney and Joe Tooney and some of them guys were on the field, McCole Hardman, do you think it would have made a difference, or do you think we just really can't beat this team right now?
I think the game would have very much been different because of the fact that you saw the struggles with the Chiefs didn't have juice on the field in that game offensively. Patrick Mahomes was still making plays. There was a couple downfield throws on MVS. I think caught a 42-yarder, if I'm not mistaken. They were spreading the ball around still because that's just what Patrick Mahomes does, especially post Tyreek Hill, where they don't have to worry about feeding two dynamic receivers anymore in Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Now he's spreading the ball around like he never has before. But yeah, man, they absolutely missed those guys. And this is, I'm glad you brought this up because I think it was actually more about McCole Hardman in this one than Kadarius Toney and even Joe Tooney, because I thought Allegretti, he wasn't near what Joe Tooney could have been. But I don't think it was the guards in the center and Creed Humphrey, Trey Pancake, Papa Smith, and Allegretti that were the problem. It was the tackles. It was Orlando Brown Jr. and Andrew Wiley that were actually causing the problems. So I think it came more down to losing McCole Hardman. And I think that there's a lot of fans out there, Chiefs fans in particular, that don't want to admit or are having a hard time admitting that this team has missed McCole Hardman over the last 3 weeks. 3-4 weeks. They've really missed him. His speed, his ability to create with his feet, people call them gimmicky plays. I'm not against gimmicky plays that they work. And you saw in that San Francisco game, which, by the way, since the Chiefs beat the crap out of the 49ers, I think they've given up like 57 points in the last 5 games. So McCole Hardman was the key catalyst in that entire game. I think he scored 3 touchdowns. So they missed him in this game, and I do believe it would have been a difference. I don't know necessarily if I'd say, oh, the Chiefs would have won, but I guarantee you the offense would have made the Bengals work that much harder because dropping 8 like the Bengals did was a lot easier to do when you didn't have the speed of McCole Hardman out there.
We had discussed it that Hardman was the key. If you go look at the AFC Championship game from last year, Miko was running wide open and Patrick was just missing him. So we thought the Bengals didn't have to really respect any speed this time except for MVS. You don't have to respect speed with Juju. Or Justin Watson's pretty quick, but you never see him run those types of routes. So we felt like Miko was where, like, we fell a little short, like you said, where the offense didn't look as dynamic. Again, they've done a good job of taking Kelce out of it. That is Mahomes' safety blanket, and I believe when he couldn't get that chemistry going with Kelce, Mahomes kind of pressed. I even felt like when he was trying to get MVS over the top a little bit, that seemed forced to me. I don't know if it was, but going at it time after time after time, it just seemed a little forced, like he was so anxious to get something going. And I feel like the Bengals just do that to him. And but yeah, man, what do you think about the Bengals fans? We've been dealing with these guys all week. They've been saying that they're the better franchise just because they're 3-0 against us, even though two wins come last year with a different roster. They're better. And Joe Burrow's better than Mahomes. What's your thoughts on all that?
The whole Joe Burrow Mahomes thing, I'm going to dismiss it, even though I'm a very big Joe Burrow fan, because I think this guy, he has that it factor about him. I really like the way he plays football. He's extremely poised, and he's got incredible talent, arm talent. And in fact, the reason I like Joe Burrow the most is because of the fact that he is so talented, but it's not even his ability to throw the ball so accurately that makes him what he is. I just love the fact that the moment's never too big for him. This guy just knows how to, I don't want to say win because I feel like that's such a cop-out to say, oh, he's just a winner. No, I don't want to do that. I just think that if you look at what the Bengals were before Joe Burrow, and then 2 years into his career, they're in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's just something special about this guy. Zach Taylor was an unknown commodity at head coach. He turns this franchise around. So I'm going to give him credit. But let's not make the mistake of trying to draw comparisons here because there is no comparison between him, Patrick Mahomes, anybody. I can give you the numbers. I can break it all down for you. Or I can just go down the list of accomplishments from an individual perspective, and then we can really just put that to bed. So we don't need to go too far into that. All I'll say, when it comes to Bengals fans, you know what, man? I'm going to let them have this for a little bit because of the fact that if we're being honest here, for the last 4 or 5 years now, the Chiefs have been running things, man. We all know this, that it's been the Chiefs and then everybody else, the Chiefs in the field. I mean, if you look at every daily talk show in the national landscape, you see, all right, who's going to take down Patrick Mahomes for the MVP? Who's the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC? And it really doesn't even matter where the Chiefs are in the seedings because everybody knows at the end of the day, more than likely, the AFC Championship is going to be played at Arrowhead. That's just usually how it goes. That's how it's gone for 4 years, and that's an historic thing. So everybody knows what it comes down to. So when you beat the Chiefs, regardless of the context, no matter how the games are won, if you beat the Chiefs 3 consecutive times, you should have the right to brag You should feel proud about that because, as we know, whenever the Bills or the Chargers or any of these other AFC teams that are trying so hard to get to the Chiefs level, when they beat the Chiefs once, they're hanging banners. We see this. So if a team has beaten them 3 times, as much as I still think that the Chiefs are the team to beat, the Bengals have done something not even Tom Brady did when he was with the Patriots, and that's beat the Chiefs 3 consecutive times. In fact, the Bengals are the only team to do so. So I'm going to let them have this because right now, man, there's really nothing we can really say in defense other than saying, well, the Chiefs have won a Super Bowl and you guys haven't. You guys, absolutely crapped the bed in the Super Bowl when you guys had multiple opportunities to win that last year. So I'm going to let them have their time, but I'm very confident that in about 2 months from now, we're going to be seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, not Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
I'm going to skip us backwards just a little bit because we were talking about McCole Hardman not being on the field. And I just wanted to point out what I've noticed from that whole thing. Ever since McCole Hardman has been on the IR, our red zone offense is trash. Like, we cannot get in the end zone. And do you think that he could be, that piece that we're missing in the red zone to actually go ahead and punch this ball in? Because like you said, they do a lot of gimmicky plays with him and everything. But you saw at San Francisco, he tore them apart in the red zone. So do you think that's what's been missing the last few weeks?
100% yes. And here's the thing. It's 2 different things that are going on right now. One, they are missing. So 2 things can be true at the same time, and it's the one problem that they're causing. So they are missing McCole Hardman because he scored 4 red zone touchdowns this season. 4. Only Travis Kelce has more red zone touchdowns on this team than McCole Hardman, as crazy as that sounds, even though he's missed time. But here's the other factor, and I don't want to dive off too far from your question because I do believe that is a real problem as to why they're not scoring with what we saw so easy earlier in the season. It's also the fact that Andy's getting too cute, man. Andy Reid loves doing this stuff. He loves to, and I get it because he's a fun coach. He loves to reward his guys with fun. I mean, we saw this even back in the Alex Smith era with the bloated pig with Dontari Poe. We've seen him do cool and fun things, but here's the difference. That game in particular with the Dontari Poe bloated pig, the Chiefs were up like 24 points. Like, you can get away with that, and people are going to be like, it didn't work, whatever. Oh, it did work, awesome, and it's fun. But in games like this, where you have a 17-17 score on the road in a game that you have to win to maintain the 1 seed and control your own destiny, you do a direct snap to Jerick McKinnon, your backup running back, and Patrick Mahomes is lined up at X, far right wide. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. It's like one of those things where you see a guy that doesn't shoot the ball very well from deep in the NBA, and he banks one in, but the whole time you're like, why did you shoot that? And he goes in, you're like, oh, well, I mean, that's great, but why did you shoot that? Like, it's one of those things where you just don't understand the logic behind it, even if it works. And I think Andy gets in his own way to where instead of just going with what works, he overthinks things because he's so smart. He knows the game so well. He's been in this game for 30 years. He overthinks himself instead of just going with the simplicity of what is efficient. When you have a Patrick Mahomes, I don't blame you because it's so much fun and you just want to tinker around. He waited 20 years to have a quarterback this prolific. At the same time, though, you still have to do the meat and potatoes. And that is what's frustrating about Andy Reid. So I think it's 2 things. Not having McCole Hardman to run those jet sweeps and those little cool shovel pass motions, that is limited to their abilities to score in creative ways. But it's also Andy Reid just outthinking himself instead of just doing what's best for the team to get a damn touchdown. So it's very frustrating either way you look at it.
Last question on the Bengals. We'll move on a little bit. Speaking of that play, that was right there in a key moment. I feel like that was a wasted down. I don't feel like we rely, and this just might be us. We're always banging the table to run the ball. We feel like in key situations, they will not rely on the run, especially with a raging bull like Isaiah Pacheco, with another big monster back that just come up in Rojo. Jerick McKinnon was running the ball very well against Cincinnati. And so you look at that red zone, those couple plays, it seemed wasted. We had to kick the field goal. And then you get back to, what was it? There at the very end of the game, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. We don't run the ball. We go right away, and it's almost like Andy settled for the field goal, but he took the ball out of the running back's hands. So kind of a 2-part question here. One, do you believe whoever's calling the plays, who do you think's calling the plays? Is it Eric? Is it Andy? Are they kind of doing it together? That's kind of a debate everybody tries to get to the bottom of. Also, do you think they're abandoning the run too quick in key situations? And then lastly, would you have kicked the field goal there at the end, or do you think you should have put it in Mahomes' hands on 4th down? We do. We think you should have put the nail in the coffin right there and not give them the ball back because our defense wasn't stopping them anyways if we kicked that field goal. So what do you think about it?
I'll answer your second question first because I think that's the one that actually is the most relevant in this current time. But I think the first question is a great one. It's a fair one. And I've asked it myself many times on my own show. The second question, the Chiefs defense was not stopping the Bengals at all in that game. And if it wasn't for a Tyler Boyd drop touchdown that literally fell in his hands, the Bengals scored easily over 30 points in that game. So they've had a break there. And the Chiefs, I understand the conservative nature of relying on a kicker that otherwise has been very clutch, because Butker's been such a confusing kicker where he'll miss a chip shot that's 25 yards, but then sink one 3 straight times from 58 against the Chargers he did like 2 years ago in SoFi. He doesn't make sense sometimes. He's awesome, but he doesn't make sense. So I understand Andy Reid's mentality of, I trust my kicker. But I'm 100% on board with what you guys are saying about this, because that's the first thing I thought too, is that you pay a quarterback $500 million to be what? The difference maker. The one that decides who wins, who loses. So naturally, you're going to put the ball in his hands. Now, I understand the idea that if Andy saw Patrick limping, that maybe he's like, we got to get him off the field. I can't trust. We have no idea what's going on with that ankle. There could be something wrong. Let's get him off. Let's try to kick a field goal and try to live for another day. But Andy himself said that wasn't what was going on in his mind. He even acknowledged the fact that Patrick was limping. So that's a non-starter in that regard. So there's one logical reason. I know it's easy for us to say that now because the Chiefs lost. They did it the wrong way. But this is factual, man, that this is the best way of winning, because if you look on the other side, like as I just addressed, the Chiefs defense wasn't getting the job done all game. So why in the world would you go for the tie in the hopes that your defense isn't going to let the Bengals get 35 yards and kick a field goal with 48 seconds left? It doesn't make any sense, man. So yes, the Chiefs absolutely whiffed it on that one magnificently, almost at an impressive level, because it didn't make any sense in any regard. Now, and when it comes to your first question, this is something, man, that I have really, really struggled with, because I'm somebody that wants to give Eric Bieniemy the credit for what I believe his job is, which is offensive coordinator. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, whether they've had their issues or whatnot, we've heard a lot of things over these last couple of off seasons about them button heads, which makes me believe that Eric Bieniemy does have some control in game. But make no mistake about it, this is Andy Reid's offense, and if Andy Reid wants to implement something in a given situation, it's going to happen. So I do believe that Eric Bieniemy has the right to call plays the way he sees fit, because I do believe Andy Reid is one of those coaches that truly trusts his coordinators. Because if you look at it, for the majority of Patrick Mahomes' first 2-3 seasons as a starter, Andy Reid would be going sitting on the bench next to Patrick going over film and plays while Steve Spagnuolo's running his defense. He trusts his coordinators. He trusts Dave Toub, sometimes to a fault. But I do think that when it comes down to big moments and big times, Andy does step in, because you do see differences. You can't tell me for 1 second that was the same offense that played against the Colts that when played against the 49ers. You can't tell me that's the same offense. There was somebody else that was manning the controls in one of those regards. I'll leave it up to other people to theorize who and which one, who it was in those certain games. But I like to believe that Andy Reid is taking control in a few of these games, and the results have been better than some of the others.
Yeah, I would agree with that big time. I've always been banging the table on that one. I think that Bieniemy, in my opinion, his time here is up. Like, maybe we should move on. I'd like to get Nagy back in the offensive coordinator position myself. And that's going to wrap it up for today, Chiefs Kingdom. Make sure to come back on Saturday and check out part 2 with Lance Twidwell from the podcast The Spoken. Until then, you can catch this video right here where we talk about Mahomes' foot injury and a lot more from the Bengals game. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll see you later. Aside from my soul.